Let's talk about the tower. In Strive, there's a place known as the tower that is divided into 10 floors. Each floor is a room with matchmaking setups for people to play. While the tower is not directly considered ranked matchmaking by the developers, the community have looked upon it that way, with people using the floor they are on to justify their skill. A lot of the time when I talk to players, especially new players, they'll talk about the floor that they're on and how they're either proud of it or they're disappointed and struggling to reach the next floor. The floor system creates skill divisions between players without having a dedicated matchmaking system, and despite its numerous flaws, it fulfills the goals of making sure players don't go up against people who are much higher skilled than they are unless they choose to do so personally. This is because while the tower lets you go to any floor that is above your own, it doesn't let you go below any floor that you're already at. Does the system technically work? Yeah. It creates an environment where the people that they're going to be fighting are of similar skill and people can't come down to beat them up. The only time they can't run away is when they finally get to that other person's floor. Does it always feel fair? No. Since the game has no proper version of placement matches, you are forced into either floor 4, 5, or 6 and have to battle your way up or down the floors depending on your skill. If you're someone who's played fighting games other than Strive, you're probably going to blitz your way up the tower and ruin some people's sessions while doing it. If you haven't, then you're either gonna stay where you are or plummet to the first floor. Not to mention there's no form of skill-based matchmaking. The closest thing we have to a matchmaking system in Strive is the game putting you against somebody else who is readied up in the same floor as you. Meaning if you're on a losing streak or on a hot streak, the game doesn't take that into account and lets you fight whoever. But this video isn't a critique on the entire tower itself. This video is for me to rant about the place beyond the clouds, where gods clash and demons roam, where the best test their might against each other to see who comes out on top, and where the hopeful test their might to see if they can stand shoulder to shoulder with giants. I'm talking about Flaw 11. The Celestial Flaw. The Celestial Flaw is the secret 11th flaw in Guilty Gear Strive. Once you've won a lot of matches in Flaw 10, you gain access to be a Celestial Flaw Challenger. In this challenge, you have to win 5 matches in Celestial without losing more than once. If you win 5 matches, you become a member of the Celestial Flaw for the rest of the month, and you're able to enter freely and lose as much as you'd like. If you lose twice before getting those 5 wins, however, well, you're going back down to Flaw 10, dumbass. Come back when you got some real skills. The state at which a player is good enough to hit the Challenger status reliably, but not good enough to break through and become a Celestial member, is generally referred to as Flaw 10.5, as you're constantly bouncing between the 2 floors trying to break through. If this is you, then let's give you some tips on how to break into Celestial. Since Celestial doesn't have a cap on the amount of players that can actually be in it at one time, it's much easier to get into Celestial the further in the month you try, as more people win the Celestial Challenge each day, so the player pool and thus the skill pool gets wider. I generally say that after the first 1 or 2 weeks, it becomes much easier to get in. Playing at peak times also helps. If you play around 6 or 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., you'll end up catching people coming from school and work who might not have as much time to dedicate to the game. Since there's more players at this time, you're more likely to find somebody you can beat. This also goes double so for weekends when people have time off. Check when tournaments are on in your region, especially online ones. You see a big tournament happening that day, wait until the tournament starts and then go to Celestial. This removes the strongest players as they'll be deep in the tournament for most of that time, and you can fight the people who are just grinding out Celestial matches. And if all of that fails, you can always hop on the American servers. All of these techniques work by reducing the skill flaw so you can fight players who aren't as skilled, or reducing the chance that you're going to run into top tier players who haven't lost a single set in 4 months? Jesus Christ, Latif, what the fuck? Now, the reason you want to reduce the potential skill flaw is obvious, but the skill ceiling is a bit more questionable. Like, surely in this modern fighting game, the matchmaking system will 100% make sure I do not get matched against literally the best players of characters in my region, or possibly the entire world, while I'm attempting to make it into Celestial, right? Yeah, no, that's not how that works. See, if you remember earlier when I talked about how the previous flaws worked, I mentioned that the lobby just finds 2 random players who are ready and puts them against each other. Yeah, it's the exact same thing all the way up to the top in Celestial. This means, unless you directly pick your matches, you're going to be fighting anyone within the skill range of the lobby, which, considering that the majority of players finish their Celestial Challenge and then go and play in the parks or with friends, is a massive skill range. I would say the skill gap between the top players in Celestial and the people in Flaw 10.5 is around the same skill gap of people in Flaw 4 and Flaw 10. That's genuinely how much of a range I think you have. Because of this, trying to find a match in Celestial that doesn't feel one-sided is extremely hard. Like, okay, you got like 5 types of people in Celestial, right? You got the Flaw 10.5 people giving it another go, the people who just barely made it out of 10.5, the middle guy, the high-level competitive players who get top 16 big online tournaments, and the best players in the region. Now, if you've ever actually played against any of the top players in your region, you probably know how much better they are than basically everyone else. Like, it doesn't even feel close. I'm lucky that 2 of the top players in my region, being Zin and Carrot of Wisdom, are both really cool guys who will fight me on their secondaries when they see me, because we both know that they'd respectfully mix my shit if I was to face their Chip and Millia. If you don't know who these guys are, then go watch fucking Soul Mine League, bitch! They're playing in that shit tomorrow! I think. Feel sorry about how I called your region trash earlier? Well, see how I'm right by watching this European might! They didn't even pay me to say that. That just came from the heart. But, and don't tell anyone I said this, I'm starting to get pretty decent at Strive. Due to being chronically maidenless, I've been grinding out matches in this game like crazy to get a certain something. And by just playing a bunch of matches against players who are better than me, I've started winning more. I'd say that I'm in the middle category. I can't beat the best in the region, but I can sometimes give a top 16 contender a run for their money. But being at this part kinda sucks because, again, there's no skill-based matchmaking. My matches tend to heavily fluctuate between being like, foolishness, mortal. Do you really think you're worthy of the Celestial Flaw? You may have beaten many in your path before, but now you face a challenge unlike anything you have yet to overcome. Me. To, hey, come on, man. I'm just a little guy. I'm just having a little bit of fun. I'm just a fun-loving little guy, you know? You want to hit a little guy like me, man. Come on. Ah! Which, on their own, can be fun experiences every once in a while, but recently it feels like I've been careening between these 2 extremes constantly. On the rare instances I do get a match where the skill level is extremely close, I have an amazing time. But they're beginning to feel few and far between due to the fact that I have to search them out or hope the game randomly puts us against each other. But why do I keep playing? If the experience is so turbulent I'm getting whiplash between my matches, what's the point? Well, I really want an aura. The game's been out for nearly a year at this point, and while I've been actively playing, I consistently hit Celestial. I've proven I'm at least good enough to get in every month, but I want to prove that I'm good enough to stay there every month. But this leads to a bigger problem. Fuck grinding for these auras, bro. Fun fact, did you know that no one really knows exactly when you get an aura? Like, you would think that they had something to do with the rating board because the colors of the aura can somewhat be tracked to the colors on the board, but no, people thought it was at the top % of players in Celestial, but I can prove that wrong because I was top 500 last month and I have no fucking aura. And the worst bit is the fact that the only thing it's based on is games won. This doesn't sound bad, but it indirectly rewards time invested instead of skill. If you really wanted to, you could grind 8 hours a day while still being below the average skill level in Celestial and get enough wins to get an aura at the end of the month. It would suck because you're losing a lot, but you could do it, and since it doesn't factor in win rate, it's entirely possible because who else is grinding 8 hours a day? Obviously, if you're better at the game, you have to play less. To hit my target this month, I need to win about 30 games a day. I can do that in about 3 hours. People who are better than me could probably do it in half, maybe even a third, but honestly, 3 hours a day is still absolutely draining. At this point, Arxis, I'd rather just have a ranked matchmaking system. Hey, so I made all of this in a day. If you want to reward my destructive video creation process, I'm streaming right now, playing more Celestial matches because the suffering never ends. So come say hi and I'll see you next time.